of the visions of men. Horton, Kansas, grew from the dreams of men who built a railroad empire. In 1886, as they drove the spikes of their iron trafficway into the prairie soil, the executives of the Rock Island Railroad searched for a terminus for their three main divisions. Kansas City or Atchison would have suited their needs, but they chose instead a 620-acre cornfield. 16 months after the first lot had been sold in Horton, the town that was the child of the Rock Island's dream had 4,000 new inhabitants. Gradually, the forms of swelling brick and frame structures began to emerge as the dominant features of Horton's skyline. It was here that the railroad would house the activities of its principal machine and car shops. Every piece of rolling stock used on the line would be built in these shops. Men soon began to pour into the bustling new rail center to find a job or to learn a new trade.
My dad thought everybody ought to have a trade. And he thought a college education was a waste of time and money. A lot of those old-timers did. And he kept talking trade to me, talking trade. Well, he thought that a machinist was just about the next thing to the President of the United States. If you got to be a machinist, he was just it.
A mechanic that had learned his trade in Horton could get a job on any railroad. They were known all over the railroad industry as Brown Countyans. And they did turn out, I believe, some of the finest railroad mechanics in this country. That was their reputation.
Well, they had machinists, and boilermakers, and tinners, carpenters, cabinet makers, upholsterers, painters. Of course, when I started in, there was no such thing as welding or electric welding and stuff like that. Of course, they had blacksmiths, and they did all the welding, on the fire.
Worked 10 hours a day, 7 o'clock in the morning till 12, and 1 to 6. 10 hours a day, 7 days, or 6 days a week. At that time of railroading, it was the best job in the public. That is, it paid the highest wages. Although, when I started my apprenticeship in 1906, the last year of the trade was 17 cents an hour. Then when you become a mechanic, the rate was 29 cents an hour. That was for boilermakers, machinists, anyone on the railroad.
At one time, Horton was considered one of the best show towns in this part of the country. We've had a lot of these. I don't know that Jack Benny and some of those people were here at our High Street Theater or not, but there was a lot of those what now are well-known motion picture actors that have shown here on the stage at Horton. At one time, 800 men employed in the shops down here, and a lot of them were single men. They had nothing to do, don't you know, at night. They have to, and that's one reason why it made it a good show town, because they all took them in. They used to pack that thing just for an ordinary show. That didn't include, that 800 didn't include the trained men. And I suppose at one time, my guess is that there were close to 1,000 on the payroll here. We had a $75,000 payroll every 2 weeks. Well, that's a lot of money to turn loose, in a town this size. A lot of money. Yeah, it was a busy place. And we had 3 all-night restaurants. And I'm not kidding you. You could go down the street here at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'd find more people on the street than you would at 8 or 9 o'clock right now. Yeah, that's a fact, because the train crews were changing. They had call boys, going out and calling the crews to get the crews in, and there were always somebody in the restaurants, all hours of the night.
Rampant enthusiasm for the future was the dominant tone of pioneer speculation in Horton. The town's first newspaper editor printed these words in his first edition: with the facilities and boost from the railroad, all that is needed to make Horton the chief city of Kansas is a class of wide-awake businessmen, and such is a class of men who are casting their lots with us. We have no drones, and we want none. The editor's bright forecast was echoed in the spirit of the phrases printed on early-day posters. They proclaimed Horton as the wonder of Kansas, the prodigy of the West, and the magic city.
There was a fine group of people. As I have made this statement, I was raised in Horton among the salt of the earth, that I was proud of the fact that I grew up with a class of people that I did in Horton. I mean it, because I don't know of a boy that landed in the penitentiary, and I don't know of a girl that landed as a prostitute. So that's a pretty good record in a town of 5,000 population.
Horton always had a reputation for being a friendly town. You know, people walk down the street, and well, when I go down the street, if I meet somebody, I say hello or how are you, or something like that. I never saw them before, but in the cities, that's different. But in a small town like this, you'll find that a lot of people, lots of people, will speak to you, even whether they know you or not. We don't have any clannishness here, if you know what I mean. You know, there are places, there are towns where there are cliques and it's hard to break into them. But Horton isn't that way. We don't have that here. For some reason or other, they have it in other towns. I know I've heard them talk about it in Hiawatha. There's a certain cliques and clans up there that it's hard to break into, but we don't have that in Horton. We don't have that. We had good baseball teams around here. They had a baseball team called the Horton Hummers, and they were tops around here. They was just they run the Horton Hummers was, I guess they were in existence probably for 4 or 5 or 6 years. So they always had them until here just recently. It's always been a baseball town, and that was a strange thing. Hiawatha never had a baseball team. You remember that band show we used to have down here on in the hole, as they called it? Well, it didn't last too long, do you remember? And I suppose it's because the band broke up or something.
Well, it didn't break up place down that hole.
No, I guess not.
It wouldn't go down there.
A day in May is a time most people find difficult to ignore. And in a small Kansas town like Horton, it was next to impossible. The celebrations of the children created a sort of festive magnetism for nearly everyone in the community.
Of course, when I was a kid, it seemed to me like we were skating all winter long. Maybe we weren't, because when you're young and kids, your time goes slower and distances are greater and all that. But it seemed to me like we were skating all the time, but maybe not. Well, we used to have a fellow here named Bill Kelly. He was quite a character. He was run the ice house. In those days, they cut ice off the lake down here. I've seen him down there when they cut 18-inch ice off that lake. He'd hire about 25 or 30 fellows, to cut it and saw, they'd saw it part way and then split it off and run it up a chute down over into the ice house and cover it up with sawdust and then dig it out the next year. But they haven't done that for years. I don't think there's any ice cut down there for 15 years. Of course, electric refrigeration had a lot to do with it. Eliminated a lot of that putting up natural ice. tell me that Bill Bowes made a slide for life off the hotel up here, and they had a cable fastened to the top of the hotel. See, that's a 3-story building. And it run down a block, across into the next block north, and the cable had too much slack in it, and he went across a barbed wire fence and took his trousers off, see?
The Block Island had a band. The Block Island had a band.
Oh, they did?
And the high school had a band, and it, as I say, they used to have some pretty good entertainment there.
Oh, they were common. That was one of the things that they nearly always had at a celebration, was a balloon ascension. I can remember they had a long trench dug under, as long as from here to the back end of my truck out there, up under into the balloon, you know. And they had it covered up in dirt over it, and they built a fire in that, and then they'd throw gasoline in it. And you could see it through the canvas. You could see it flame up in there. There was a guy here, now that was before my time. Ted probably remembers that. You remember that, Ted, when the guy got killed up here at the schoolhouse with a parachute? Yeah. Yeah, he hit that, didn't he hit the chimney? Mm-hmm. He's buried out here, huh? Well, what do you know? We hired Burkhalter to take us up there to the Hiawatha Road. That crossed up the Wolf Creek. This same cyclone here that wrecked Canizos was going northeast, and it crossed the Hiawatha Road about 3-4 miles this side of Hiawatha, and tore a house down and laid timber low. You could see it. You could just follow it there for, I don't know, as far as you could see where the trees were broken over. And we hired this car to take us up there. He charged us
Probably $10.
I believe it was. I believe he charged us, I believe it was $8, Ted. It took 4 of us up, and I think he charged us $2 a piece just to go up there and turn around and come back. But we wanted to see what it looked like. You say they never figured out what it was?
Not that I know.
What time of year was it, I wonder?
In the wintertime.
Was it? Well, probably called
I was a little kid, but
for
I can
heating.
remember.
Heating plant, I suppose, maybe. Used to be a lot of that in the old days when they burned coal, you know. Flues catch fire and set the roof on fire.
In 1917, the citizens of Horton found out, like most Americans, that distant places with strange-sounding names can suddenly come quite close to a small community and to home. Horton's soldiers left for the war in different ways. Some left in a flurry of ceremony. Some left quietly. Most left someone behind. A war that welded a world so close together was also bringing a world of change to Horton.
I can remember when I started in business. See, I've been in here for 50 years. And the first year or two that I was in business, a lot of people just jacked the cars up and stored them for winter. They didn't use them, see. It was tough lots of times on those old cars to get them started when it was down to zero weather, you know. I remember an ad that the Standard Oil Company used to run in the wintertime. They said, motoring conditions at zero temperatures are very unfavorable. They don't think anything about it now. That was a Standard Oil ad years ago. But it wasn't very long, maybe 2 or 3 years, or I would say up in about the time of World War I or a little after, people started driving them all year round because cars have been, and they improved them, you know, so they started easier. And of course, a lot of people got a kick out of just driving around.
As more and more people began driving around, the need for better roads increased. The paving of Main Street was a clear sign that Horton was yielding to the demands of a new invention. And as more and more dirt roads were transformed into smooth, hard thoroughfares, it became easier to travel to far and to distant places without using the train. For some who left Horton, it became easier not to return. And if automobiles were bringing Horton closer to its neighbors, there were other devices yet to come.
But Norm Schrader bought this American Eagle down in Kansas City, and a fellow by the name of Andy Davis came up here and taught him how to fly. There was a fellow by the name of Roland Wolf, and one of these fellows that was always experimenting one thing or another. He built a radio. He built a radio before he could buy one. And it was one of these, what they call them, they used a little piece of stone with what they call a crystal set. And he had a pair of headphones. And I'm not exaggerating. I have counted 20-some people waiting in line to listen to that thing for just a little bit, see. Yeah, they come in the door, just stand there in line waiting for their turn to put those headphones on and hear a radio. They thought, that was way back in the early 20s. I'd say about 22, maybe. But we had 3 trains a day between St. Joe and Topeka. We had one at 9:30 in the morning, one at 5:30 in the evening, and another at 9:30 at night. Well, on Sunday afternoon particularly, everybody went down to see the trains come in. They met here. The train from Topeka and the train from St. Joe passed here. Then the Northwest from Fairbury come in at that time. So there was 3 trains came in inside of probably 15 or 20 minutes. And everybody, all the young guys, used to go down there and get dates, you know. The gals would walk down, a bunch of gals would walk down, a bunch of fellows, and we'd wind up with dates. Everybody practically went down to the depot to see trains come in. I've often thought that some of those people riding through on the train must have thought this was a big town, or there was a lot of people leaving or coming in or something, because they looked down on the platform before, you know, just thick with people, just standing thick on Sunday afternoon.
In 1922, July the 1st, 1922, 450,000 railroad mechanics struck. They had a lot of fights and trouble there. 18 months later, on the Rock Island, the strike was called off. And it was one of the biggest strikes ever lost in this country. And they moved the activity to Armadale.
Now, the rolling billows of black coal smoke have gone from Horton's skies. The shops are silent. What things do men remember about a time so long ago? Is there bitterness?
I don't think there is, no. Because that's been a long time ago, you see. Most of those people a lot of them are dead now, the old people that went out on strikes. And I think that's all forgotten. There might be some of the old timers that would be holding a grudge, but I doubt it. I think that's all forgotten. Now this fellow, Ted Kilmer, he was a striker. He went out on strike, but he never mentions it, never says anything about it anymore. There's very few of those fellows left around. One thing was that their stalls for repairs of locomotives and their roundhouse were too short for the long engines, for the newer engines. The result was that when they put those locomotives in the back shop for repair, they were so long that they stuck out the building, see? And that's why they went to Armourdale. Armourdale was a newer built shop. And then your change, the switch from steam to diesel, it just changed the picture entirely for as far as the railroad was concerned. But I would say that probably the Depression and the change of power, types of power, had more to do with the shops being moved. But nowadays there's nothing there. I think we don't even have a section crew here anymore. They moved them out. I think the only one on the payroll is the depot agent down there. I don't know what he does. The railroad doesn't take on any less than carload lots anymore, you know. You can't ship anything under a carload. No, sir, I tell you that the people down nowadays don't realize it, that such a thing happened. But no, it was quite a town, but it's gone now. It's not. It's a farm town now. No, there's been a lot of change. And I've often thought, I was telling somebody here the other day, I'm 74 years old. I've got 3 grandsons, and I'm 60 years older than the oldest one. What will this country be like when he's my age? I've often, and then you got the space age, the satellites, and your interplanetary travel they're talking about now.
We left Horton in 1916. We've been here on a visit ever since 1960. Horton's our home. I never make a little talk in Horton that I don't tell them that. When we had the reunion up there, I told them that I was just there back home.
As far as Horton's concerned, I wouldn't think of leaving. You know what I mean? I'd hate to go out and make new friends and try to make new friends at my age. And I like the people of Horton here. I think it's just as far as that goes, I think there are other towns probably that's just as nice. People, it depends on who you know, and who your friends are. And I suppose there's people in Hiawatha that think that's the best town in the world, and Holton the same way, and Atchison in the same way. But there's a class of people in Horton, I think, that's a little different.
I think Horton is one of the best little towns in the state of Kansas. I do.